You ever watch somebody who was once a great athlete and they just don't know when to pack it in and when to let it go? And they're at the end of their career and it's hard to watch. Or in other cases, musicians, great artists who were once amazing but now it's just over. And everybody knows it but them. And perhaps I'm giving too much credit by saying great athlete, because I don't think Justin Trudeau was ever a great politician at all. But at one point, he was immensely popular. I mean, go rewind the clock back to 2015. He was considered the next great one. He had arrived. He was the guy, Sonny Ways, that was going to fix everything, and the media was in love with him. Everywhere he went, people fell all over themselves. On the world stage, he was adored, and it's deteriorated into a state of utter disparity and chaos, and it's quite sad and pathetic. And the guy is obviously delusional at this point. The definition of delusional means having false or unrealistic beliefs that persist even when evidence proves them wrong. For example, someone who is convinced that their microwave is trying to control their thoughts is delusional. He goes to a fundraiser last night after yesterday, all that happened, and he stands as though he's on top of the world, telling people that being the prime minister has been the great privilege of his life. Really? That's your message? And the sycophants that cheer him on, I just can't understand how anybody at this point could support Justin Trudeau. How anybody with a thinking mind could back this guy and this government. I mean, how? I have no idea. Dominic LeBlanc, KG politician from New Brunswick. I've had an opportunity to interview him a number of times. Just seems to back this guy up for whatever reason. If Mark Carney gets involved with this government, he is delusional as well. The best thing Mark Carney could do if he has any hopes or aspirations of politics in the future would be to distance himself as much as possible from Justin Trudeau. And Chrystia Freeland, what can you say about that? Well, look, she's gave him a hug apparently during the caucus meeting yesterday. That's weird. That's just strange that she would hug him. Anyway, this party is absolutely in total free fall. And I'll get your thoughts on all of this. Perhaps you think that Trudeau has another life, has a 10th or 11th life, or whatever it is. Maybe you think that he can resurrect the party or resurrect his position as prime minister. Somehow get something. I have no idea, but how they could screw things up so badly. It's just when you think that they bottomed out, they go a little deeper. Now, I understand that for many of you, the options are not good. For some of you, you like Pierre Poilievre and would assume that and think and have confidence that he'd be a good prime minister and like his messaging. That's all well and good. But I also know that for many, because I hear about it, you have hesitation when it comes to Pierre Poilievre. Fear or have feelings or fear that he's too far right of center for whatever reason. Maybe you think that he will roll back women's rights or whatever it might be. You hear these things. I personally don't think that he's. They said the same thing about Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper was going to was going to do his best to reverse same-sex marriage laws, and he was going to do this and that, and he never did any of that stuff. Didn't care about that stuff. I think if you're Pierre Poilievre, you're more fixated on the economy than anything else, more than social issues, I would dare say. But anyway, these are things you can talk about. And do you care that there's a $60 billion dollar deficit? The federal government is spending $60 billion more than it takes in its operating budget every single year. That's not to account for the debt and the growing debt and all that goes with that. I mean, we are in desperate shape as far as I'm concerned. And on top of all of that, we've got a looming tariff war, trade war with the United States, and you've got a president who continues to poke fun at this country and its leadership. again last night did the same thing on social media, calling us the 51st state. And he's paying attention to what's going on here in Canada. And that matters. You can say, who cares what Donald Trump thinks? Well, it matters. And it matters big time. So we are entering this trade war from a position of chaos. Not a good situation when you're dealing with a president-elect who some would say is delusional as well. So these are the characters that our lives and our well-being as a country are relying on to fix this situation. I would say that it is precarious at best. Again, we'll take your comments and your thoughts on all of this or anything else that you've got in your mind. I've got a few other things in the pile as well. Thanks to Vanessa Vandeness on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. And as mentioned, look forward to hearing from many of you in about an hour's time. All right, now joining me for a chat, Bob Bancroft, retired wildlife biologist. Bob Bancroft, welcome to the show as always.
Welcome to you, Todd. Nice to talk with you again.
Indeed. Okay, I saw this story, and it was all over social media, and I thought I'd get your take on it. I saw this one on the CBC website. The headline, Feathers Ruffled on the Halifax Trail After Rare Owl Attacks. 2 joggers experienced owl attacks on the trail recently. How common or not is this? I assume it's not very common. I've never heard of it.
Well, I certainly have, and I've experienced it myself, but I deserved it, Todd. I mean, what happened there is young owl babies, if they're youngsters together in the nest, sometimes one gets kicked out, and people have called me, and I've had to go back up with the owl and put the youngster back in the nest. And you can expect the parents to you wear a leather jacket and a motorcycle helmet when you do that because they're very talented.
Yeah.
But the other thing is. They're a predator who makes a living by killing things, and when I look at the site there of Chain of Lakes Trail, it's been developed, and I bet these owls. I mean, they nest in a hole in a tree, and they're young ones at this time of year. They're no longer with their adults. And basically, when I see that picture, I can tell that Hannah Bailey took the picture at dusk because the flash is reflected in the owl's eyes, and that would be startling for an owl because they have very special eyes that can bring in a lot of light in low light conditions. And so the animal may have been startled a half hour before it was struck. But the other thing I think Butch Galvez did a pretty good job of talking about this. But the other thing I think is that it's a little different. Maybe that they're actually probably starving. We've had an interesting problem with snowshoe hares, or rabbits as people call them. There used to be a cycle where they'd be very common and then they'd disappear for a while and then they'd be very common again, and that just hasn't happened in a lot of places. And as a young bird, the other thing, of course, is the fact that the ponytail may have been flopping. And while I've been doing radio shows, 2 people have called in over about 4 decades and said that they were actually duck hunting early in the morning when it was still dark, and had an owl attack their head. And when you think about that, they're all in camouflage, Todd, and the only part that's really moving, they're being very still, and the only part that's moving is their face. And in 2 cases, the birds actually landed on what they thought was some kind of a small object when it was a person. So I've raised them, and they're really interesting animals. And one thing about owls is they can identify people as individuals, whereas some birds cannot. So that may have been a frustrated bird, and they were all sitting there. They sit on the side of these trails waiting for a rabbit or a squirrel to come out, and oh my goodness, there's people going by, and somebody may have either mistaken the ponytail or they just got upset that they're like it's like if for example, if a deer hunter has some guy walk through where the deer are going to be, it's like, okay, that kind of takes care of the hunt for a while, and that's exactly what may have happened with these animals trying to see if they could get a meal, and the joggers keep interfering with what they're trying to do.
Are they largely nocturnal?
Yes, but I've had them. I was operating a backhoe one day here. We have a nesting pair of barred owls here. I was when they get desperate for food, and one May I was operating a backhoe just to the west of my house, and the reason I'm telling you that is that I had an owl swoop right over the backhoe while it was running, and I was digging. And it landed at the bottom of the deck stairs and grabbed a garter snake, and then it flew off to a black walnut tree that on the property, and then the baby came over and wanted to be fed, and that was at 10 o'clock in the morning in the spring. So if they have a lot of bad weather, they're adapted to. They're like bats. They'll come out in the daylight if they're starving, if the night hasn't been a good night for them.
How long do they live, owls?
10, 12, maybe more years. Depends. They get to know you. And when I rehabbed them, I had a permit, I should say. Some of them really understood that you were trying to help when they had got a porcupine quills in their face, sort of thing. And a lot of young owls learn the hard way. And they actually understood and were very easy to handle once they realized you were trying to help them and not hurt them. But I think these animals that you're talking about here are probably just frustrated, and I would say it's a number of things, but lack of food and somebody disturbing their hunting site. So. I've also seen them get startled when a large noise happens or something too, and they've flown over me on my property. I've got 56 acres here, and it's almost like I did something that startled them, and then they're worried about me. So it's only happened once, but they're complicated creatures, and they live a complicated life. They've got to be fairly opportunistic, and I have a lot of respect for them.
Are they largely territorial?
Yes, but more so during the breeding season. The territory expands when the young are out of the nest hole, but they are territorial. And it's interesting because when I've rehabbed a barred owl in a pen, there was a great horned owl outside the pen that was very upset that the barred owl was there. So that really demonstrates the fact that at least there is a territory, and even and hunting territories are sought after at this time of year.
I would think there'd be plenty of prey, though, with rodents. There seems to be no shortage of rats and mice all over the place.
It depends on where you are, I guess. Yeah, that's the trick. I know I've seen 2 rabbits. It's the first I've seen in a long time, and right now they're white on brown because of the lack of snow. And they're gone this morning. I suspect somebody may have picked them up, but because they're very vulnerable. But I think it depends on where you are, and I can't tell you what the situation is, Todd, with on the trail.
How about cats? Are they in danger at all?
Cats are in danger from the owls.
Yeah.
I've actually I've seen situations where great horns were nesting on an old crow's nest right in the town of Pictou, for example. Had to get the fire department to help me get an owl back up, and there was a lot of shall we say evidence under the nest that pigeons and cats were the prey items.
Wow. So what precautions do you suggest that people take? Obviously, not let your cat out if possible.
Well, people don't listen to me too much. The cats do a lot of damage to bird populations, and people are very irrational about letting their cats do whatever the cats want. But I almost part of me feels as a biologist, if you're looking for a balance of nature, that you should every town with a lot of cats. I remember one case where a friend of mine called me and was down in Bridgewater, and there were 130 pairs of eyes around in the evening from cats trying to catch goldfish in a pond. So they all come out for a little sport, and most of them are well fed anyway, but they like to hunt. So frankly, I've had cats and I like them, but I would really recommend that people, they can learn to be happy inside. Some cats can. They're psychologically a little complicated, and I wouldn't want to speak for every cat.
Always interesting, Bob. Thanks for your insight, and we'll do it again.
Take care.
All right, you got it.
Merry Christmas to
All
you.
right,
Have a good holiday.
You too. Bob Bancroft, retired wildlife biologist. Don Desserud, UPEI political science professor, when we come back. All right, joining us is Don Desserud, UPEI political science professor. Don Desserud, what the heck is going on in Ottawa? What a circus this thing is now at this point. What are your thoughts?
No kidding. I don't know who's writing this script, but they're obviously having a very good time. This is very, very, very strange. Now, it's not the first time that a prime minister and a finance minister have found themselves on the outs. In fact, Liberal Party seems to make that a habit. But this is different. I mean, this is someone who has been a loyal supporter of the prime minister. This is not a person who I don't think who the prime minister sees as a rival to his job. You know, if you think back to going way back to his father and John Turner, or Chrétien and Paul Martin. You know, these are people who were basically fighting for the same position. This is not Freeland. She's been front and center, the minister of everything they used to call her. You know, and so if she is fed up, or she thinks that things have gone too far, then that's a huge indictment against this government and the prime minister himself.
All right, let's assume or suggest that Justin Trudeau on Friday does not ask her to step down and offer her another portfolio. Does she go out as business as usual without any of these concerns and delivers this economic statement and does not express her concern about the political gimmicks like the GST holiday or the $250 checks? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, and as one person, was John Manley, was being interviewed, he said, this is coming a bit late. I mean, she was supporting this before. She should have made her views known. That's a tricky one, because cabinet solidarity, and if you're a person who's on the very, very inner circle, what she is saying, or what she has been saying to the prime minister for a while now, we don't know, but I would suspect that this has been something that's been brewing for a while, and that she was willing to try to push back when she could. But once you go public, the whole idea is that it's cabinet solidarity is that you accept the decision. Something happened there where this just was no longer tenable for her. The idea of the other cabinet posts, though, I think that's interesting, and I would like to see analysts other than myself, I think, explore that, because I would have thought that if the prime minister had said something like, we desperately need a front person to take on the whole question of tariffs, the United States, the relationship with the Trump administration, all those things that you have done before. This is going to be a very senior and important post for you. Would you take that on? I kind of think she would have. And then when you read that he sort of said that, but with this strange minister without portfolio idea, but with that as a mandate, and she did not take that on, that means to me, I'm probably overcomplicating this, but that means to me that there's something more going on there, that she just does not have the confidence that he has a clear idea of what Canada should be doing next.
Who do you think he would have had in mind to take the position of finance minister?
Well, I don't know whether he even did, because it's quite possible that this took him by surprise in a way. I mean, obviously, if he says to her, I think you need to step aside, he must have had someone in mind. If it's Mark Carney, if that's actually true, that's an odd way of going about it, and I would be surprised, not that I can read people's minds, of course, that someone like a Carney would want to jump into a portfolio at this point. What's he going to do? Run in a by-election? Is there even time for one? What's going to happen in the next election? Is he going to run the next election and then be an MP in the opposition ranks? I mean, none of that seems very palatable. But let's say that the prime minister just assumed that Carney could come in, and he could have somebody else in the interim. The fact that Dominic LeBlanc has stepped up to it Didn't surprise me at all, by the way, because he's the other go-to person when Trudeau has problems. He goes to LeBlanc, and now we have a person with an incredible burden of portfolios. There's a lot of stuff that he has to do there.
Do you think that Trudeau is at this point? I don't know. I don't like to use adjectives too strong, but delusional when it comes to the reality here. Can he not see that? Does he believe, I guess, when all is said and done, that he can rebound from this?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I've wondered that myself. It's hard to understand how he could not see what's going on. So either he does and he doesn't, and he thinks that's, well, put it this way, he'd rather, and I don't know why, he'd rather be defeated in an election where at least he could say, I gave it my best, and this is what, and this is the results, and I will live with that. That's the way democracy works. Then look like he was pushed out, forced to resign, basically get admitted failure. It's an interesting question. Which would you prefer? You'd kind of prefer to say, well, I'm not going to go and take a beating because, frankly, the beating will not just be him; it'll be his whole party. So you think you step aside for the sake of the party, but he may now be at the point where it's all about what he thinks is the way he can extradite himself from the situation. Does he actually think that he can turn things around? Probably a part of him does. A part of him does. He does understand that politics is very fickle. Things can change very, very quickly. I can't imagine things turning around, but perhaps in the bubble that he works in, he does think that fortunes can change very quickly and benefit him. That would be a miracle in itself, of course.
Yeah, and getting lost in all of this, you get the likes of Sean Fraser, who's a young, pretty talented a guy from Nova Scotia, had several cabinet posts and pretty important and prominent ones. And he's announces yesterday that he's no longer wants to run again and is stepping down, and that gets buried. I mean, that goes to show you how much of a free fall, in my opinion, this government's in right now.
Yeah, and that in many ways it surprised me, if not more, at least as much, because for Fraser is definitely a rising star. So he's very well respected. People were thinking of him as definitely as future leadership material, if not sooner than later. That one. That's another circumstance. When a person says that for family reasons that they want to step aside, and we've talked about this before, I always respect that because quite often that's exactly the truth, and we have to be careful not to read more into that than that. But it could also be that he sees the writing on the wall in terms of the fate of Liberal MPs in the Atlantic region, which is not good right now. He'd be one of those MPs that I would have targeted as a person who would be able to keep his seat. But then again, what are we talking about here? People who have been cabinet ministers, do they want to then play the role of being an MP on the opposition benches? Is that something that they signed up for? And that's probably part of it as well.
How long does this government last, in your opinion?
Well, I until as Poilievre says, until Jagmeet Singh says, okay, fine, enough's enough, I'm voting non-confidence. It'll last for a while. Like the code of messaging from Singh is that if Trudeau is to step aside and they had a new leader, we'll reconsider our support for that party. It might be we might come back on board. So as long as they have that support, they'll be there for a while. I think that's going to be the trick. At one point, the NDP are going to have to start paying attention to their fortunes and to stop thinking of, do they want to be in the opposition with the Conservative government, and start thinking, do they want to be the official opposition with the Conservative government? Because they're in a good position to actually do that, or the Liberals are in a good position to slip to third.
Okay, just quickly, does Trudeau step down in the new year?
I don't think so, but if he's going to, it'll be a period of reflection over the holidays. It'll be kind of like his father's walk in the snow. My betting right now is that he will not, but a lot can still happen between now and then.
Okay, Don, always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
All right, take care. Don Desserud, UPEI political science professor. Again, some things that I'm sure that some of you will want to talk about when we open the phone lines between 11 and 12. Air Canada ordered to pay $10,000 after a couple endures a horrendous experience. Gabor Lukacs will talk about all of this when we come back.
Thanks.
I saw this story on the CBC website. Air Canada ordered to pay $10,000 after a couple endures a horrendous experience. The couple had saved up for 3 years to go on a first vacation without their kids. And I reached out to Gabor Lukacs to talk about all of this. President, Air Passenger Rights. Gabor, thanks for joining us, of course.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
All right. So this story is it's quite long. I don't want to read all of the details because it would take up most of the time for our chat. But suffice it to say that they had a right out of the gate, a horrendous experience with Air Canada. Do you want to give everybody, I guess, a little bit of an overview about this situation?
In broad strokes, I would say these passengers did a favor to the airline and were acting very considerate of other passengers when they offered voluntarily to give up their seats on an overbooked flight so that other passengers would be able to travel. They were promised some compensation and also certain terms in terms of alternate transportation, which then the airline did not fulfill.
Yeah, which is...
This resulted in a trip from hell, basically, for the passengers. Eventually, they had to just go home without taking the vacation they were hoping to have.
Right. So if you arrive and you're in the situation where a flight is overbooked and people are offered the opportunity to take another option and save some money, that might not be, obviously, based on what I'm reading here, it didn't work out, and you're taking a risk, are you?
Normally, if the system worked as it's supposed to be, if airline did what they are supposed to do, it would work out perfectly because you get some extra compensation from the airline. They put you on a flight that you agreed upon, and everybody is happy. But in this case, they were promised an alternate transportation on an American Airlines flight, and when they showed up at the American Airlines, they said, you don't have a booking with us. That they were sent to Montreal, sent back. They were really treated as pawns, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I would still think that we should continue being good Canadians to each other, to be kind, and to offer to give up seats in exchange for some compensation voluntarily, because as a volunteer, you ensure that somebody else who really need to travel is not being involuntarily bumped. But we should definitely hold the airline accountable when it does not meet everything it promised to volunteers.
All right, so obviously we're talking about this experience, but is it, how often does it happen? What type of percent do you think it is? Do you think that the vast majority of the time people, when they're offered to give up their seats and to take some compensation to travel alternatively, do you feel as though that is more the norm than the exception, and perhaps this story is not reflective of what's going on for the most part?
I'm afraid this is reflective of generally how airlines treat passengers, whether they give up their seats voluntarily or they are just experiencing a flight disruption. The fact that the airline is using just a computerized system without any regard to realities of the circumstance on the one hand, and also the airline's failure to offer and to arrange to rebook the passengers on competitor airlines' flights, which is a legal requirement under the Air Passenger Protection Regulations, if the airline is unable to transport you within a few hours of the original departure time. So the broader issue that we are seeing here, which I'm confident we are seeing it happening all the time in our Facebook group, is that while the law requires an airline to rebook you, even on a competitor's flight, that obligation is not being met by the airlines, not being enforced by the federal government.
All right, so if people find themselves in this situation, look, they're extremely vulnerable. You're in an airport and you're scrambling around and you're hitting roadblocks and you're not getting answers. What advice do you give to people? What are some steps that people can take in order to help them in if they find themselves in this situation?
I would document what I'm hearing, what I'm experiencing, but ultimately, at some point, I would go out and buy a ticket on my own and then make the airline pay for the expense. I would have probably bought a ticket at the point when the American Airlines flight that was the premise of the passengers agreeing to give up their seats was not actually booked for them. That would have been a good point from a legal perspective to say, okay, you didn't meet your side of the bargain to give me a flight on this American Airlines flight, so therefore I'm now going to buy a ticket on my own and then hold the airline accountable for the expenses. But it does mean, of course, engaging in some conflict. It does mean that one has to then go back to the airline and say, look, this is what you promised, you didn't do it, here's the evidence that this is what we were promised this, you didn't fulfill what you promised us, and now please pay the bill for the extra expenses.
Yeah, but obviously some people aren't in a financial position where they can do that.
Exactly, and that's what airlines are exploiting, and that is the reason that it would be so important for the federal government to crack down on this type of behavior and issue hefty fines. The problem is that while Parliament authorized the government to make regulations for higher fines, much higher, up to $250,000 per incident per passenger, those regulations are not being made. The higher fines have not been implemented by the government for reasons known only to the government. So essentially the government is sabotaging Parliament's will. Parliament wants to protect consumers, but the government is dragging its feet.
All right, so the air passenger rights, the Air Passenger Bill of Rights, this came into effect 2019, I believe, or what can you tell us? How empowering is the Bill of Rights or not?
The air passenger protection regulations that you're referring to, it is a poor man's version of the European Union's gold standard of passenger protection. As Nova Scotia Small Claims Court held a couple of years ago, the Canadian version is unnecessarily complex and complicated, far from being consumer friendly. And in my view, it is more of a smoke and mirrors than an actual consumer protection. In this specific case, because the passengers spent 2.5 years litigating and they really had a compelling case, it worked out well for them. But it should not take this much effort. It should not take spending 2.5 years litigating to get what you're owed. And the reason that it is so complex, the reason that it is so complicated is some fundamental flaws in the Canadian version of the passenger protection regime, while in the European regime, compensation owing, it would be determined very quickly. It would be far more transparent, and there's far more incentive in the European Union's regime for airlines to pay up.
Okay, the backlog of air passenger complaints was over 80,000 according to the Canadian Transportation Agency, and that number is just obviously overwhelming, and I would think that with a backlog like that, this leads to more frustration. What can you tell us about the backlog, and will that ever be cleared up?
First of all, we recommend passengers to avoid the Canadian Transportation Agency and go to small claims court instead.
Okay.
Here in Nova Scotia, you will typically get a first hearing, within a month or two from the date you file. The trial may be a couple of months down, but certainly not years. The Canadian Transportation Agency has a long history of being cozy with the airlines, being hostile to passengers. Recently, there was a CBC story, I'm sure you saw it, about the Canadian Transportation Agency trying to muzzle passengers about their own cases, about their own complaints. So it is not a consumer-friendly office, even though it is supposed to protect consumers. That's the root of the problem. So if you have a problem, take it to small claims court. You are going to get a judge who has no axe to grind in the story, who is going to be impartial. They may be right or wrong. Eventually, you may agree or disagree with their decision, but you can be assured that you're going to get a fair hearing here in Nova Scotia. Okay,
but there's no harm, I guess, in going with both avenues, is there?
No, there is harm. It is called an abuse of process to try to go to the Canadian Transportation Agency and small claims court.
I see.
You cannot do both. Basically, it would be a waste of resources. The idea is that if one forum decides a case for you, then you cannot go to the other, and that's actually very sound legal principle.
I see.
So we really strongly discourage passengers from going to the Canadian Transportation Agency because if you lose there, you're stuck with it.
Right, I get it. And dealing just straight up with the airline, filing a complaint with the airline, that's okay, or?
It is a first initial step.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say filing a complaint with the airline, sending them a demand to pay.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court of Canada recently confirmed in an October decision that this type of standardized compensations for flight delays and cancellations, they are essentially in the nature of debt. So the same way that somebody may owing you $1,000 for a loan you gave them, an airline would be owing you $1,000 in some circumstances when your flight is delayed or canceled. So you tell them basically, pay up. You owe me this amount, please pay up, and give them a deadline to actually the APPR, or it provides a 30-day deadline for the airline to pay. If they don't, you just serve them with small claims court papers. Let them come to court.
Okay, but first you must do your best to try and get the airline to pay, like you said. That's the first step.
You first notify the airline. You need to be in the writing.
Right.
You send the airline a single notice advising them that what happened if you're claiming amount X.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not necessarily engage in protracted negotiations with the airline because it's a debt. It's not negotiable, really. If they say we don't owe you this amount because it was outside our control, I would ask for detailed explanation about what happened actually. And if, as usually it happens, the airline just refuses to answer, there is your clear answer that some airline doesn't answer questions, likely doesn't have the answers, so likely they owe you money.
And at that point, small claims court's the best option.
Small claims court is the best option in my view, yes.
Okay. Gabor, listen, I appreciate your insight as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, take care. Gabor Lukacs, President, Air Passenger Rights. And hopefully you don't run into this situation, but I'm sure some of you listening, traveling this holiday season, will likely end up with a grievance with an airline. And his advice is, as mentioned, file your complaint, or rather issue your demand with the airline directly, state your case, and then small claims court. And that's good advice for sure. Ashley MacIsaac, you know Ashley MacIsaac, renowned fiddler, maritimer, has a Christmas album out. We'll talk with Ashley when we come back.
It was just last summer.
All right, that is Christmas in Burnside from Ashley MacIsaac's newest Christmas album. Ashley MacIsaac joins us for a chat about all of this. Ashley, thanks for joining the show.
Well, Mr. Veinotte, Merry Christmas to you and to your whole audience.
Indeed, Merry Christmas to you as well. And this is your second Christmas album, is that correct?
It's actually my third, Todd. I did one about 10 years ago that I just did a sort of soft release around Cape Breton, printed a few copies, sold them to the friends. But this is my second full big production one that I've done in the last 30 years, for sure.
Nice. Christmas Across the Atlantic. Tell us about the title.
Well, I'm sitting here looking across the Atlantic. I spent most of my time in Ontario for the last 30 years. But I have a home in Cape Breton. Actually, I live in an old convent. A lot of people don't know a lot of things about me, and I do some weird things. Maybe you've heard that before. So I look across the Atlantic, and I was thinking this year about Christmas, how a lot of our Christmas celebrations are based on the old English things. And, of course, I play traditional music, traditional Scottish music, and it just seemed like a fitting title. I got mostly, I guess, all Atlantic Canadian artists joining me on it. Some of my good friends, and some of them are known in the UK. J.D. Fortune, of course, who's a well-known singer who toured with In Excess is on it. Got Cassie and Maggie McDonald, Judd Gunning, a great young performer, son of Dave Gunning, and that sort of thing. So it's Atlantic Canadian musicians. It's myself. It's celebrating things. One of my songs on there is Holly and the Ivy. Of course, Rita McNeil made that well-known here, but our holiday celebrations often are very similar to what you'd have over in the UK.
And a lot of, at least a couple of, how many covers are on this?
Well, they're pretty much all. I mean, Christmas carols and Christmas songs have been written by other people. Yeah. I do have that one original song on there, which is the one song, and it's funny you started out there, of course, you're in the metro area, but I was walking Nova Scotia here this last summer, and I met a young fellow who had gone through some tough times And I thought, Christmas is all about joy and celebrating, but we have to remember some people aren't having that great sense of joy that we all hope to feel. And that's why we support food banks and we do things to try and reach out to people who aren't maybe having that Christmas spirit that we all want. And I wrote that song, Christmas in Burnside, based on an experience a young fella had last year while he was in jail in Burnside. So that's the only original on there, and it's really it's different than all the rest. The rest are pretty much joyous Christmas carols.
Yeah, and how do you keep things? How do you make something that's been done a million times and then some? How do you make it new? I guess.
Well, I do it. You got to put your own stamp on anything you do as an artist. I think for me, I'm very happy with this production. I did the entire thing in 6 days, and working very fast is something that I've always found. It doesn't leave room for mistakes or for just going to the old standard. If you're going to come up with something original, it's usually on the spot. And so I gave myself a week. I ended up putting it to 6 days. And the original takes on these have the spin of Ashley MacIsaac stomping and playing the fiddle here and there. But I sang some on it. That's an original thing. A lot of people don't know that first time I sang on stage was 1978, Todd. So I sing on it. I do all the arrangement. I played most of the instruments. And I just got something original. I'm sorry for getting a beep there on my phone. My mom is phoning too, of course.
No sweat. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so obviously it must be quite rewarding to have people who you respect and to want to take part in this. Tell us about what it's like to have a compilation of artists who you really respect, who are willing and happy to take part. What's that like?
Well, I went for young artists, and I'll tell you, the reason is I've been around, like I say, I've been on the stage for, over 40 years now. Yeah. And so I knew there was some great people that I liked in the Maritimes, seeing them perform. Like I say, Judd Gunning, he's this great young performer. I'm having him join me this evening in St. Peter's, Cape Breton. We're going to do a benefit for the United Church here. So I just basically, I reached out to people. I said, look, there's no money in music anymore in making CDs. You get 0.001 penny. So if you want to be part of this, we're doing it because we want to do a nice thing for an audience that wants something different at Christmas from you and from me. And they all agreed so quickly. And again, it was really just put together really fast. And they were all people who I respect, who are young, new, talented artists from the Maritimes. And I couldn't be happier that they said yes to it. And of course, like I said, I've been around for decades now. So I don't know if it's out of respect or they just wanted to be part of something that I was doing. But either way, we came together and made this project.
Yeah. So the state of the industry, you kind of talked about it. Do you see it changing, or is it improving? Are there opportunities that weren't there before, or how do you look at the industry and the state of the music industry in general right now?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to poo-poo on a nice Christmas morning interview, but it's a joke. I mean, the reality is there's no music in making, or there's no money in making music to sell other than through what I've always done. See, I've made the majority of my living on live touring. So anybody assumes that you're making money because you paid, you bought a thing on Spotify, like that's hilarious. If you have 1 billion views, you might make $1 million if you're lucky. Yeah. So, most people are anywhere in that. And when I put something out, if I get 100,000 views, great, I might get a check for $100. So I just put stuff out as an advertisement to let people know that I'm out there and I'm touring. Next year is my 50th birthday. I'll be out on the road. Hopefully I sell tickets. That's basically what it is. And I remember George Jones talking about this about 25 years ago, after, if we remember that early online phase of Kazaa, it was called. At that point, he basically said, I'm just making records for advertisements, and that's what I do. So there's no money to make off selling things. If you want to listen to my stuff, you can go and download it for your iPhone and all this stuff for sure. But you can also, I put it up for free on YouTube as soon as it came out. Right. And there's an accompanying Christmas special that I put together. Just in a day, we filmed a great little show that you can also see on YouTube. We've just put my name in, Ashley MacIsaac, Christmas Across the Atlantic. Nobody has to pay for it. I'm not getting paid off this. You want to pay me, come out and see a show sometime. And I don't charge $5,000 a ticket like Taylor Swift.
Well, Ashley, sounds great. So if people want to know everything about you, or they want to find the album at Christmas Across the Atlantic, they can check you out online. Just direct people the best way to consume all things Ashley MacIsaac.
Well, I don't think you want to consume all things Ashley MacIsaac. So there is definitely a way to find things. You can go probably to Facebook pages, and then again YouTube, and of course the standard ways that people are purchasing things and streaming them, the Spotify, YouTubes, all that. I don't follow that stuff myself. So for the folks out there who don't have any of that yet and just listen on radio, they of course can listen to your show if you play it, and that's Santa Radio that's advertised. Mm-hmm. But I do have, I think I printed maybe 200 CDs. So if you reach out, you find me online, you might be able to get a CD. But for this year, for Christmas, just go to YouTube and type in my name and Christmas Across the Atlantic, and you'll see everything that's there.
Okay, and as far as when you're going to be touring as well, that info is at your website, I assume?
Well, let me just say, it's been 25 years since that infamous New Year's Eve program at the Grand Parade in Halifax. And the next time you can see me in the metro area, they called me back. I said, hey, they always keep coming back, don't they? It took 25 years, but you'll get to see me that night. I'm going to be there with Pineo and Loeb, those fabulous artists, those DJs from Halifax. I'll be there with some other guests, and that's the next time you'll see me in the Halifax area.
Okay, thanks.
Grand Parade.
Thanks, Ashley. Looking forward to it.
Good to have some vino in the morning.
All right, take care, pal. Ashley MacIsaac. Check it out. Check him out on YouTube. And the album's called Christmas Across the Atlantic, and appearing here in Metro, as he called it, on New Year's Eve as well, which is cool. All right, we got some room for you. What is on your mind today? 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz. I'm sure that some of you want to talk about what's going on in Ottawa. 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind on this Tuesday, 902-405-6000, the last day that Parliament will sit before its break, its Christmas hiatus, whatever you want to call it. All eyes on Parliament Hill today. The big question is, what will Justin Trudeau do in the wake of the stunning developments that saw his now departed Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland resign from Cabinet? Ontario MP Chad Collins told reporters last night that the Liberal caucus is divided and that the party needs a leadership race. Trudeau has yet to speak publicly about the latest developments. My question is, why is there any debate over what needs to be done? I think it's pretty evident from anybody, even I can figure this out, that he's got to go. It's time. I mean, the time is long past due. It's over. And I think that, look, I know that I've piled on when it comes to Justin Trudeau over the years, and I would like to give myself a little bit of credit in that I was calling this guy out for what he is before it was in vogue to do so, and took a lot of heat from people. My opinion of Trudeau was always the same, in that I don't think there's a lot of substance there. I think that he does a great job in his what he appears or what he wants to represent, and that he's this caring person, this feminist, and all of this shtick that he has portrayed, I think, has all been pretty fake and phony. And I think, by the way, that goes hand in hand with a lot of politics. He's not alone in that, but I've never thought he was a guy of substance, and I've never really understood the allure of Justin Trudeau. But he was at one point immensely popular. Back, you rewind the clock back to 2015, and remember that it was Trudeau mania. Basically, he could walk on water, literally did no wrong, and it has only been scandal after scandal after scandal, and finally he is imploded, and the curtain has been pulled back. You're seeing it on display. I don't know what else needs to be done. I don't know what else you would have to do to turn people away. But clearly, it's off the rails, and it's time to go. I know that some people don't want to they want to cling to power. I understand that. I get the allure, I suppose. But how much is it worth? On a personal toll, how much is it worth? I mean, his marriage is done. And again, look, lots of people go through these personal problems. But it appears as though that his life is at the age 50, whatever you're 50, early 50s. Go for your walk in the snow. Salvage whatever you can out of your reputation, because I don't see how it gets better at this point. I really, truly don't. I mean, he's down to his last few people that are loyal to him, and Dominic LeBlanc, I guess, will be the last stronghold. But what are your thoughts on the future of the Liberal Party and of Justin Trudeau? Is it inevitable? Do you have to go? And Chrystia Freeland, again, after she was told you're done, then she decides to criticize in a departing letter, I guess better late than never, some of these policies that were thrust upon her, including this GST tax holiday and the $250 checks. She called them gimmicks, political gimmicks. Well, why not say that a month ago when Trudeau was asking for this to be done? Say, look, I disagree, and I will go public with this. I will take a stand, and I will tell the public that I oppose that I don't agree with it, for the reasons that she explained after being fired. I could respect that. But on your way out the door when you get nothing to lose, I don't know. I think it's a little too late. So what are your thoughts on all of this, folks? And what do you think about the alternatives? And the alternatives would be Pierre Poilievre, of course, and Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh yesterday, non-committal when it comes to whether or not he would vote non-confident in a confidence vote against the government, which I think is spineless. Again, he says Trudeau has to go, calling for his resignation. When asked if he would vote against the NDP would vote against the Liberals in a confidence motion, he would not commit to that. I can't remember the turn of phrase that he used, but he said that no. Basically, he would not fully throated say, we will take this government down first opportunity. And you have to ask yourself the question, why would you not? If Trudeau's got to go and you're calling for his resignation, would you not be in the same sentence saying, and we will do everything in our power through the acts of Parliament to make that happen? Is perhaps all the talk about the fact that he and many other MPs are relying on the government to last until after February to get a full pension or to get their pension benefits at 55? You can't help but think that that's at play. So what are your comments on all of this, folks? And, of course, the ongoing looming threat of the tariff trade war with the United States, and Donald Trump continues to basically make fun of the situation and make fun of Canada in general. And what do we do about that? This is serious, serious stuff. And we are going to be negotiating from a position of severe weakness, which is the perfect storm. Really, it is. 902-405-6000. So give us a call. What's on your mind? What would you like to get into? Perhaps some things outside of what's happening in Ottawa you'd like to talk about? That's all good as well. 902-405-6000. Let's kick it off with Tim. Hello, Tim.
Morning, Todd. How are you?
Well, you?
Very good. Well, listen, the instability in the actions yesterday was simply embarrassing, and it certainly creates a great deal of void and vulnerability for Canada for a variety of reasons. The budget went from 40 plus million to 61 million. I know there's accounting and whatever, but at the end of the day, Trudeau has to stop playing for himself and start recognizing that it's for the country. What he needs to respectfully do is resign. We have the pending Donald Trump coming on January the 20th. What he'll do, we're ill prepared. In my opinion, we are simply ill prepared. I wouldn't vote for any three of them, But at the end of the day, if we don't get our stuff together, it's going to create a void and a vacuum, and Donald Trump's going to run over this country. And I hope I'm wrong. I've said that before, but it creates a great deal of cause for concern. And I'm not sure where we're going to go, but I don't see anybody in any of the three parties providing any sort of leadership, and that creates a vacuum and a large concern.
Well, Tim, if there's nobody of the three parties who have what it takes, then we're in severe trouble.
Well, no, I would agree with you. They all take this oath of office, and they promise to do this, that, or the other. They all promise to commit to the country and commit to doing the right thing. And the right thing that Mr. Trudeau can do is simply resign. If he's not back until late February or March, Donald Trump comes into office on January the 20th. Who's going to be doing what between January the 20th and Parliament resumes? And again, if we don't have our stuff together, that's going to create a great deal of problem. And when I see the budget going from 40-plus million to 61 billion, it's not necessarily you or I that may be paying for it. We may be short-term, but it's the youth of tomorrow that's going to be paying for this stuff. And somebody has to be responsible and accountable for their decisions. And they get elected to do a job. Do the job.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. So if Trudeau steps down, then the Liberals would have to name an interim leader. I'm going to suggest that it could be probably Dominic LeBlanc. Whoever it would be, they would not have aspirations for the job full time. So let's suggest that it's Dominic LeBlanc as the interim leader and the interim prime minister. Not a bad choice, I suppose. Again, Dominic LeBlanc is a cagey politician. We all know that. But again, a desperate situation. Just the timing could not be worse. 902-405-6000. Tyler, hello.
Todd, anything going on in the news today?
Not much.
Todd, you're on fire. I agree with every last thing you said in your opening, and I did want to get to that. Let me change the subject very quickly with something that I think is astounding going on in the States with this character in New York that gunned down the CEO.
Yep.
Now, if anyone is following this story, this is political violence is what it is. It was politically motivated. He is into the readings of the anarchists and anti-capitalists, and he wrote a review on some book about the Unabomber, where he's essentially justifying or giving excuses for that. And as well, he's retained a high-priced lawyer through crowdfunding. Mm-hmm. So it's funny to me because I thought that the left was against political violence. I thought that when January 6th happened, that was unacceptable. Now, somehow that's unacceptable, but it's no problem to shoot someone in the back in broad daylight. So I'm just going to leave that lay as it is, and I'll move on. This thing with Freeland, it really, in a nutshell, is what this government is all about, isn't it? It's completely just in disarray. They're inept. They're incompetent. They have no idea what they're doing. And this is where the House of Cards has finally just collapsed on itself. But I think that Freeland, I heard that she actually got a standing ovation.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. How ridiculous is that?
How
and then even more laughable than that, she and Trudeau hugged after that. That's right. For God's sakes.
And,
what type of clown act are we looking at here?
Well, I can't imagine anything more ridiculous than what we're seeing right now. Because obviously this was personal between her and Trudeau. For her to put him in that situation, the country, the party, everyone in that situation, to save her own political career and her own personal image or whatever. I mean, she's done tremendous damage. And this is why Trudeau didn't see it coming, because he didn't think that she would go that far. Yeah. to resign on the day of an economic update. We're in an economic crisis. We're about to go into a trade war. We're in shambles here, and she puts herself in above everything else, like you said, after going along and playing nice for the last 10 years. Peter Julian was on CTV last night from the NDP, who described it perfectly. We are a G7 country. This is the most incredibly amateurish display. But, what else would you expect from this team of people? It is a government comprised of activists, Nepo babies, and diversity hires. So I've seen it coming all along. I know that you have as well. And any serious observer should have been able to see that this was going to happen. But Justin Trudeau is a play actor. He is a former snowboard instructor who was a part-time drama teacher, who rode in on his father's coattails, and the Liberal Party...
Okay, Tyler, we're just up against a break. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Gary, hello.
Good morning, Todd.
Hi there.
Yes, I was listening to, I've been following what happened there the last couple of days, and you're right about Trudeau and no substance. He got there on nice nipples and nice hair is basically what got him in there, and the fact that he was a Trudeau. And I never liked his father that much, but he had more substance than Trudeau will ever have, even Trudeau Jr. But listening to some of the news reports, one of them was kind of funny. He had a terrible, horrible, very bad, no good day yesterday.
Yeah.
It was, and then he lost that seat out in BC. I guess the Conservatives wanted 66% of the poll. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much more of a message does this man need to step down? It is horrible that he's hanging on like he is. And in the eyes of the rest of the world, we got to be a laughingstock, really.
Well, listen, it's unfortunate the timing could not be worse, because Donald Trump's certainly paying attention, and he's making fun of us online on a daily basis, basically. The timing is horrendous. I'm not sure how much more how much worse it could get, I suppose. I'm not sure if other governing bodies or parliaments are as dysfunctional as this one. I don't really, who knows, but it's on the world stage, we are looking bad for sure, Gary. I don't know how much attention people are paying to our political ongoings here in Canada, but it doesn't look good.
Well, when I listen to what people are voting for, a lot of the people, they want change, but they don't know what they're voting for.
That's right.
That Trudeau's got to go, and the other guy's better. And I'm hoping that that's going to be the case. Todd, because he gave out a lot of goodies over the years, but when people think that they're going to get something for nothing, and I heard you also say it too, that when they were giving out all the money for COVID, the CERB money and everything, you said that we were going to have to pay for it in taxes, and they're doing the same thing with this tax holiday. Yeah. It's our own money that he's giving us, and we're going to have to pay that back sometime.
Well, I mean, the budget was supposedly the deficit was projected to be $40 billion. It's now $60 billion, and a large chunk of that is money that was handed out during COVID, and the government has admitted that they're just not going to recoup it, so they just dump that onto the deficit. So that's a pretty sad indictment, isn't it?
Well, it is, and if you go back to years ago when Justin was running, he said the deficit will fix itself. Yeah. And just recently, he said, basically said that in a report, and I heard it, you can't make this stuff up. He said, I'm not that concerned about the economy. Let the banks fix it. It's government policy to fix the economy.
Yeah,
it's not banks. And when you hear remarks like this coming from supposedly an intelligent man, and I don't have any degrees in economics, but I know household stuff, and the budget just doesn't fix itself.
That's for sure, Gary. Thanks for the call, pal. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Ken, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
Well, you?
Fabulous. Listen, the Trudeau there, I kind of figured something was going on because when he went to Mar-a-Lago, he didn't take Freeland with him.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good point.
And the thing is, Trump especially does not like women that are smarter than him. Okay? So, and because he was a finance minister, so Trudeau said, okay, I'll just bring the other guy with me. But then when Trump turns around and calls Trudeau a governor in the state of Canada, Trudeau has that little smile I just hate. That little, instead of backing up, right? That's what I like about Doug Ford, right? He's tough. But anyway, another thing I want to say, I just want to be quick, is the Postal. I'm glad they're back to work because, I'm 65 years old. Mm-hmm. And when I was, I think up to about 12 years old, or I forget exactly when they stopped delivering mail to the houses.
Yeah.
Right? They used to come and they used to give treats to dogs. My mother would give the postman every Christmas a Christmas card, and he would talk to us and stuff. Now they just drive around in trucks, open up a little thing, shove a bunch of mail in it, and drive away again. So, I'm just a couple little bickering part here. But, going back to Trudeau, this government just went, it's like a Benny Hill and Mr. Bean combined. This government's doing right now.
Okay.
Anyway,
all right. Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. What is on your mind today? Again, 902-405-6000. An email from Colin, then back to the phones. Colin says, Trudeau will stay till the bitter end, and why not? He will be fine after his time as Prime Minister. He already has money, will do what any other former Prime Minister does and sit as an executive on some organization or write a book or be a public speaker. He's depriving Poilievre of power for as long as possible. I don't blame him. Things are bad now, but it will only get worse under a Poilievre government. Well, Colin, I don't know how things could be worse, to be honest with you. I really don't. I respect your opinion, and thanks for writing, but I don't see how things could possibly be worse. What could be worse than what Trudeau has done? When you look at the scandal after scandal, I could go on and on and on. The way that he's treated prominent cabinet ministers, including prominent women, and you could go back to Jane Philpott and Jody Wilson-Raybould, and there are other examples. The guy is obviously a control freak. I just don't. The deficit is $60 billion. The mishandling of public funds. I could go on for hours. I don't know how things could be worse. People say that Poilievre would be worse. How could you run a government worse than this? I don't know. I just. If he's just sticking around just to stick it to Poilievre, I think that's a pretty poor reason to stay. A completely dysfunctional government to just say, yeah, but it's better than Poilievre. Therefore, I'm going to stick around and to deprive him power. I think that is not a sufficient reason, in my humble opinion. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Michael, hello.
How you doing, Todd?
I'm well. You?
Well, good, buddy, good. Look, I hope people for once finally realize now that we just don't make a phone call to complain. That when you see something happening and nobody responds, and the most dangerous thing about it is, Todd, just to quote that George Chaplin, he said, "Never underestimate the power of stupid people in large groups." That pretty well bells the cat as far as I'm concerned. When you got the President of the United States making a joke of this place, and he's a gangster, when you got his right-arm man right behind him coming out and calling your Prime Minister an insufferable tool, and not one person in this country stood up, right or wrong, and went to the defense of the Prime Minister. Something obviously rotten on the ship of state in this country. And its leadership, they're none. They're none. I heard people yesterday, and I counted at least 7, called in, said all Singh wants is a $60,000 pension. Judge Singh is a millionaire. Tell the fools to go and see what his net worth is. You know, you're dealing with stupid people, Todd.
All right, then why else would Singh not say, I'm going to take the government down first chance I get? What other reason would there be?
You can take it down through rules. If Trudeau brings Parliament back after Christmas and starts getting into thinking he can run her any further any longer, they'll use the tools and vote against them.
He hasn't committed to that. He is not committed to doing that.
Not yet, because Parliament's still there.
That doesn't make any sense what you're saying, Mike. He was asked yesterday, will you vote against Trudeau in a confidence vote if given the opportunity? And he would not say, yes, I will. He refused to say that. So what other reason would there be other than pensions are at play?
Todd, he's a millionaire. Come on.
How do you know he's a millionaire? I don't know. He's a millionaire. I don't know that he's a millionaire. Even if he was a millionaire, it's still you're not going to turn your nose up at a big pension at 55 in perpetuity till you die.
That's not the question. When I watched the news last night, and the Canadian press for 2 years in a row come out and made Poilievre Man of the Year, what did he do? The only thing I saw him done, and I don't miss a trick, was vote against every time there was something brought up in Parliament, regardless if it's right or wrong, that identified with the ordinary people to give them help in some way. They voted against it. And they come out and call him Man of the Year. That's what's wrong with your country, Todd, and it's been going on for over 200 years, and we got to change.
So you really think that Jagmeet Singh would be a good option as Prime Minister of this country? Really?
You never know till you try.
I think you do know.
The electric car is not a good option for the combustion engine, but until you try it, you can't really make a judgment on it.
I disagree with you. I think Jagmeet Singh would be disastrous for the country. I think he has shown absolutely no backbone whatsoever.
Jagmeet Singh is one of the smartest men in this country, Todd.
Yeah, right. Wow, Michael, come on, pal. You're smarter than that.
Listen, Todd, I am not, and I don't mean you, but I heard comments and seen them on social media. You got to race this country, buddy, and that's what you're dealing with, and that's why he doesn't get his just due.
Yeah.
But let him go and earn it like the rest of them, and he must have a stiff upper lip, because I wouldn't be able to take some of the slurs and remarks that were made at him, that he had to put his back up in the air, and he had to defend himself at the end of it.
Okay, thanks for the call, Mike. Appreciate it. Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Shelley, hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
Oh, my God. Where do I go after Michael?
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't call to talk about Ottawa, but I will make a very quick comment on it. The fact that I have two ladies in mind. I have Chrystia Freeland and Melanie Jolie, and our Governor General. I think you know who I'm talking about. Being a working person in the society, I'm ashamed what these ladies do to women's rights today. It's terrible to say, but I think they're terrible leaders, all of them. They put women's rights back 100 years. That's my opinion on these three ladies, and I think you know the Governor General I'm talking about. But the thing that I really want to speak to you today about was there's a new thing out right now. It's happened last week, I think. There was a comment or a posting made with Lena Dehab and I think Darren Fisher. They gave $500,000 to a restaurant here in the city who is doing quite well, actually. It's a well-established establishment. It's Meza. I think they're called Meza. It's a Lebanese restaurant. Mm-hmm. And they're well-established, and they don't need help. But they gave them $500 to build a new restaurant. Now, I hear all the time about all the restaurants here in the city who are struggling and trying to get by and having to close. And with all the homeless people we have here in the city, you mean to tell me that we could not find a better use for $500,000 than giving to a restaurant who's well established? I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked to hear that. That's my opinion. I'd like to hear what somebody has to say about it.
Okay, I don't really know. I don't know what you're talking about, so I can't really comment. But I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Yeah, if you just Google Lena Dehab and you'll see the great announcement, the big show she did, and she gave this restaurant $500,000.
Okay, thanks for the call, Shelley. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Harold, hello.
Hello, Todd. Yeah, I go back a few years, but I was thinking about Brian Mulroney and what he did to the country years ago. Free trade and good paying jobs went from the middle class to the bottom in a short time. And then I see Justin Trudeau, and it makes me think, you know, he's got Brian Mulroney's book, I'm sure. It just run the country into the ground, and who cares? And that's the way it seems to be going. I don't know who's going to change it, who's going to make it better. I can't see that either. That's not in. It doesn't matter who's in there. It's going to be the same. So that's my feeling anyway. I've seen the two of them, and I think they're pretty good friends anyhow. And we've seen that when he put Brian Mulroney in the ground, the 3-day thing, like he was the king of something. Yeah, and I didn't look at him that way. But anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it.
Okay, thanks, Harold.
Good day.
Okay, appreciate it. I think what Harold's getting to is that the political process is, for the most part, rigged. It's a rigged game. It really is. From the riding level up, it's rigged. It's an insider game. If you want to penetrate it, it's almost impossible. Again, the game is almost rigged. And that's where we've arrived at politics. People can be invited in, but only from the establishment, from the establishment, from the roots of it. And again, even the riding level, if you want to get a nomination, you would think that, okay, grassroots politics, I want to get involved in politics. I want to run for the riding of wherever I live, and I'm going to put my name. You'll find out pretty quickly that that's not how it works. That it is rigged. And that is one of the core key problems with the whole system. And that's why you keep having the same types of people running and getting elected and becoming put out by parties. Because the system, unfortunately, is rigged by the insiders. And the further you get to the top, the more rigged it is. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Apparently, Jagmeet Singh's net worth is something like $78 million. I don't know. Somebody sent me that email. I just did a quick Google search, but who knows? Anything. You can't really trust anything you see online, I suppose, but this is all we can go by. So, look, and again, I'm scrolling. Jagmeet Singh is, for whatever reason, he is propping up the Liberal government is actually quite hypocritical and pathetic, actually. How he can come out and say Justin Trudeau has to go, he has to resign, Well, will you vote non-confidence and to not be able to, in the same breath, say, yes, I will at first opportunity? You have to ask yourself the question, why? Why is he not? Why is he contradicting himself? And the fact that he is contradicting himself, and it's without debate a contradiction, it means that he can't be trusted, in my humble opinion. 902-405-6000. Kevin, hello.
Hey, good morning, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good to hear you're on the mend.
Thank you.
Chrystia Freeland resigned, and the reason she did it, I guess, is because her and Trudeau have a disagreement about the incoming tariffs, which Trump is pushing. I think there's a lot to be said in that sentence. I think the disagreement is of major importance. I think she saw Trudeau's path forward in that regard is going to have serious implications for Canada. And I think a lot of what's going on right now is the problem is Trump and the States. The United States is a powerful country. They're much more powerful than we are in many, many respects, economically, politically. And the question is, it's like a minor league team playing a baseball game against a major league team. I'm sorry to phrase it like that, but that was the best metaphor I could come up with. It. What do you think? Do you think that Canada can stand toe-to-toe with the U.S.? I personally don't.
Well, stand toe-to-toe. Look, I think our best hope right now is probably the Premier's and the Premier's offensive and the fact that they're gathering and they're taking the bull by the horns here. And I think the way to take on the United States is to show business leaders and the electorate in the United States why tariffs would not be good for them. To me, that's the way.
Yeah.
This idea that Trudeau thought, we'll go down to Mar-a-Lago and we'll charm him, because that's the way Trudeau has operated his whole life, is that he's used his charm and that name, and that's the way he's persuaded people. But it's not working this time, and it's not going to work.
You have to remember, too, Trump is not just a politician, Todd.
Mm-hmm.
Trump is an actor.
Yep. So is Trudeau.
How much of this is an act?
Yeah. Well, there you go. How much is an act? But again, Doug Ford, and he seems to be kind of leading right now the premiers, and they don't all agree 100% on how to approach this. But the way to approach it is to demonstrate to the United States citizens and business leaders that tariffs would be bad for them as well. And go ahead.
What you say has much merit. The only problem with that theory is, what if it backfires?
Well, how could it backfire? What do you mean? How could it backfire?
Well, it could only make things worse as far as relations go between the two countries.
Yeah, but we can't just go by. We got to play nice. We got to appease Donald Trump. That's obviously not going to work. I think
No. I'm not suggesting 100% appeasement.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm not suggesting 100% the other way either. See, you have to walk a fine balance with this.
Yeah.
You have to find a fine balance. And this is the key to the whole question. Where is that balance going to land?
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't think a war of words is the right approach, and I'm not suggesting that, but very methodical, calculated, targeted approach into the United States, applying pressure to Congress, to senators, to everybody, to let them know that these tariffs would be harmful to American business and American consumers. And to me, that is the only approach, because you're right, a war of words isn't going to work. If we descend into that, we got big problems, Kevin. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Let's see here. Let's talk to Adrian. Adrian, hello.
Hi there. I'm driving, so I'm just going to pull over.
Okay.
So I just have a simple thing to say, and that is in life that you get what you ask for. So if you're asking for money, if money is your aim, then, you go to someone who knows about money. And if health is your game, then you would go to the top health person, and so on down the line.
Yeah.
You can't get blood out of a stone, so, if you don't ask the right questions to the right person, you're not going to get a right answer. And basically that's just how I simplify what I'm thinking, is that I understand that something like 37% of Nova Scotians voted in the last HRM election. But my point is that, what happened to the other 63% who live here? Why are they phoning and complaining? If you don't care enough about what happens to yourself, for yourself, then nobody else is going to care. So, I had to vote because I care. I'm not going to have somebody else dictate to me how I should live. And so if I don't speak up, and if I don't say, if I'm afraid, or I think I'm not worthy, or I think that, whatever the thing may be, then you don't have a right to complain. So just sit down, spend 4 years listening, and then the next time you have an opportunity to vote, I suggest that everybody vote, because we don't really know what anybody wants. How could you know if you take blue dots for every person in Nova Scotia and you put up the 37% with the blue dots on the other side of the screen is going to be the dots of the people who didn't bother answer.
Yeah.
So that, I don't know if you got my point.
Yeah, sure. No, I get your point. Vote. Get out there and vote. Have your voice heard. That's your point, right?
Yeah, and don't complain. Just if you lose the game, like if I'm a swimmer, which I was, and I was in a race, and I came in third instead of first. The message my coach would give me is, hey, you need to practice more. You need to get stronger. So if you didn't get in this time, listen up, go with the flow, and get more aware of what you're talking about. If you don't know what you're talking about, then don't talk.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Brian, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, you?
Good. First time calling in, so I'm pretty excited. I always listen to you every day. Appreciate your show.
Great, thank you.
I love what you do. I think we need to be very, very careful, and we need to be careful of, what, and you're part of the media, and you're a voice here in the media. When you mentioned that you feel that it's, candidates and the whole situation is rigged, I have friends that have put their name forward to be a candidate in, for example, my area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, this is a former school principal. If we say it's rigged and that there's no opportunity, then we won't have people who come forward that are actually interested in making a difference. So I think, we have to be careful in the media. You have a very powerful, and I'm sure you know this, you have a very powerful voice. So saying that the system is rigged, I think, can be a very, very dangerous place.
Well, Brian, listen, I'm not going to just cheerlead for the sake of cheerleading. It's what I think. It's what I believe. It's what I've seen. I've seen too many times. Sure. And obviously not every single example is rigged, but too often it is, where candidates are basically told, don't bother running because we've already selected our person. And to me, I think that it is rigged, and I would love it that if it weren't, but it's what I feel.
For sure. And we have our definitely our different opinions. Now, going a little sidestep really quickly, Justin Trudeau, on that topic, unfortunately, 9 years in power, to put yourself in that position as Prime Minister, it takes a lot. I'm not a liberal at all, but I do appreciate people who put their name into the game and get into politics.
Yep.
It's 9 years. I think he needs to step down. The writing's on the wall. The party knows this. The polls show it. I understand polls cannot be 100%. We saw that in the U.S. election.
Yeah.
But I really do think he needs to take that walk in the snow and come back and say, you know what, I've done 9 years. I've done a lot for the country. Whether we agree on the policies and the directions he's went, but I think it's time for him to leave and take that walk.
Okay, Brian, appreciate the call. Call again. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. I didn't get to all of you for that. I apologize. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow from noon until 1 because we've got Dr. Gillis from 11 until 12 on Wednesdays. The Science Files when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, it's time for the Science Files with Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University astrophysicist. If you've got a question for Rob, give us a call at 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. And Rob, I promise I won't ask you what's going on in Ottawa and with the Liberals. How's that sound?
That's great. I mean, an hour away from the Liberal Party train wreck would be good.
Exactly. That's right. Unless somehow we could make it a science-related topic, which I don't know. Maybe explosion. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. The closest I get to politics and science is usually science funding, and let's not go there.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Okay, 902-405-6000. I got a few emails from this, including Ken, and I wanted to get your take on it. Mm-hmm. And it's these, what the hell is happening with these drones in New Jersey?
So I've no idea. I mean, all I'm seeing on this is sort of like the headlines, and I'm just sort of wondering, is this just a big, giant hoax thing going on? So
yeah, but I mean, why New Jersey and why? I mean, the size of vans. Apparently, some of these drones.
The size of vans.
Yeah,
That's
I've heard that
by me.
Yeah, like huge, like relatively speaking, drones that would be beyond something that you would purchase.
A drone the size of a van is the size of an air taxi.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, it's funny because I was seeing all of this and it wasn't interesting enough for me to click on.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, it's because it's just popping up everywhere, and I was like, oh, this just looks a bit weird and silly. Anyway, I should know more about it, but honestly, I looked at that and I thought, oh, I have no idea what's going on.
But there is. I mean, this is not a one-off. These are like many countless reports and being reported on in the media of these drones in the New Jersey area, and it's strange to me. You're doing a little Google search right now, are you?
Well, I am, because, I mean, a drone the size of a truck is an enormous drone, all right? And that's not something that's going to be flying around in U.S. airspace without a lot of people looking.
Well, exactly. So you're suggesting that people are exaggerating?
Am I suggesting people are exaggerating? Only in the sense that if this is something that the agencies know about, then it's not a big deal, right? But, I mean, like I said, I shouldn't speculate, because if I haven't read enough, I'm not going to fall into the trap of just sort of like going, ooh. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's a bit weird. I mean, I'm struggling to believe that there are things that are flying around out there the size of trucks that the U.S. Federal Aviation Authority doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, let's face it. I mean, if there's something like that going on, they've got all of the radars for tracking these things and so on. They can probably tell pretty well where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, it's presumably related to some kind of military research. I mean, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Would there be some obligation on behalf of the military to notify people? Like we hear that quite often here. If there are military exercises going on, they'll notify us. They say you may see convoys of trucks or whatever, things like that.
I mean, it literally depends upon how secret it is.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Okay, so I guess that's all we're going to get out of that.
No,
sorry, folks.
It's one of those things that when I'm looking at it, I saw it on both the BBC, I saw it on CNN, and so on, and it really didn't come into my main focus, because I was like, oh, this just looks like there's just something
just
going on.
Just clickbait is what you were thinking,
well,
perhaps.
But there's a lot of stuff that happens that's like that, with people flying. So the Chinese lanterns, right, that have the little sort of flame underneath them. You can buy little kits for those that have flashing lights on them and will fly, and they look pretty trippy if you don't know what you're looking at, right? Especially at night. And so I was thinking it was something along those lines, to be honest.
Okay, 902-405-6000. We'll continue to monitor it.
I know someone's going to call in and say, "Oh, it's really serious." So yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, no, actually, I shouldn't be so sort of like mocking and whatever in my tone. I shouldn't do that. So yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Charles, hello.
Hi, Dr. Rob.
Hi.
Todd.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Quick question on kind of a dark topic, but I am curious. Nuclear fallout.
Mm-hmm.
From what little I've read, it appears as though it, in fact, never dissipates. It's with us permanently. It can last in the atmosphere for thousands of years. And one thing I've just never heard about the whole weather, changing climate change, whatever term you wish to put on it, never really heard any reference to Hiroshima, Nagasaki having potentially spearheaded some of our change in weather. It's all been carbon, and more carbon.
Yeah, well, I mean, let me sort of talk about fallout. Fallout is essentially related to the radioactivity from a nuclear weapon that then you suck up a lot of material in the mushroom cloud and then you radiate that as well. And so what really determines how long fallout is a concern for is what's called the half-life of the nuclear radionuclides. So those are the elements that are radioactive and that are causing all of the radiation. And so for much fallout, I think it's like 50% of it, that's actually comparatively short, literally a handful of hours at most. And so over a period of time, the actual amount of radiation in the fallout is going down, right? Now, there are some long-lived isotopes in there, of course. I mean, anyone who knows about any kind of nuclear accident knows there are some things that hang around for a while. But most of the most significant part of it is lost within the first few hours, I believe, and then it just keeps on going down over a period of weeks to months and so on. So that's one of the main reasons why people will talk about if you look at nuclear test ranges and so on, those have a little bit of residual radiation, but not as much as you would think and so on. And certainly sort of like Hiroshima and Nagasaki are the same. So that's one of the key reasons. And in terms of their impact on the overall climate, as one-off events, it's not actually going to be that significant in terms of like putting material up high into the atmosphere and so on. If you were going to sort of point to an era when there was, I wouldn't say an impact so much on the climate, but certainly an impact that we can measure in the geological record, that was the nuclear test period, right, of the 50s and 60s, when there are lots of in-the-air tests and so on. And then that actually led to a deposit of radioactive elements around the world. And we can actually use that to date how old soil is. But in terms of the overall impact on the climate and so on, it's just not going to be that big.
Okay, and just final supplemental. Ozone depletion, and again, this is not original research. This is just what I pick up here and there. In some cases, the blasts are so intense and so extreme that I understand they can actually deplete regionally ozone, which I would think if there even is an ozone layer, that thereby the sun's rays would be more intense in certain parts of the earth, and also thereby heating up surfaces, water, etc.
So, I mean, again, it's true that you will have an impact locally on the ozone just from, I think it's, there's a specific molecule that's maybe nitrogen oxide or something like that that's created during the explosion that will then actually go and deplete ozone and so on. But again, it's going to be really quite localized, right? And that's the key thing.
Okay. Look, thank you for the thorough explanation.
No problem.
Okay, thanks. 902-405-6000. Mike, hello.
Hey, I got a question about these drones. So, if the American military...
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's more about satellites, I guess.
Sure.
If the American military can watch a terrorist crawl in and out of a cave in Afghanistan, they must definitely be able to know where these drones are coming from.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying.
Is there any way that they couldn't know, like, that these could evade a satellite?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. With anything that's going on, I mean, if it's flying low enough to the ground, then even just regular law enforcement services are going to be able to track this thing, right? You're going to have helicopters in the sky and so on. So I'm sort of looking at this thinking there's something's just not fitting for me, why there isn't sort of like a public discussion about this. So I kind of wonder whether there's something going on that's a test of certain technologies and they need to do it in a built-up area. That's a key part of it. And that possibly might be going on. But like I said, I haven't looked at this, so I'm going to be very careful in terms of what I say.
Yeah, I guess my question was more about the satellite capability than the actual drones. But
So with satellites, there are elements of stealth technology in some satellites. So certainly from radar cross sections and so on. But overall, the one sort of thing that many groups are going to know at the end of the day is a rough timing associated with satellites coming over, and they'll sort of like try and avoid. And that's one of the reasons that the intelligence community is very interested in having the X-37B spy plane, that they can literally fly into different orbits, different times. People aren't going to know when it's coming around, and so to give them that element of surprise. So that's really one of the key things that's changing in surveillance, I think.
Okay, great. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for the Science Files. Science Files continues when we come back. All right, it's the Science Files with Rob Thacker, St. Mary's University astrophysicist, and we were chatting off air here about this phenomenon going on in New Jersey and with drones, and I suppose anything that you look up and you see in the sky that you've never seen before is going to cause alarm, right? I think, or raise suspicion or whatever, and that might be at play here. What are your thoughts?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, so one of the things that happens quite often for us in the Department of Astronomy and Physics is, so when there's a report of a comet, for example, people will call into the department more and say, ooh, am I seeing it? There's this sort of like white thing on the horizon. And very often, because we're right underneath a big air corridor, that's actually just a contrail, right? Most of the time, someone will call the department, the secretary will ask me, and I'll look outside and I say, yeah, it's just a contrail. So, and that's, and no disrespect intended in this, that's just a reality that when you don't look at the sky very much, you can get sort of like slightly freaked out by what you see if you don't know what it is. And so you brought up Starlink. Yeah. So the little, what we call little trains, dots going across the sky together. If you don't know what you're looking at, that's a series of satellites, you're like, whoa, that's trippy. What's that? That's freaky, right? And so that kind of thing happens. And I, having looked very quickly during the break, that there is a joint statement by the Federal Aviation Authority and the FBI that this is nothing to be concerned about. It's a combination of lawful commercial drones, hobbyist drones, and law enforcement drones, which doesn't surprise me on the law enforcement side, that this is all actually just day to day. And so if people are saying, what's all of these things in the sky, that means they're looking up more.
Yeah, but it does speak to airspace and safety and airports and all, not to cause alarm, but I mean, this is...
So I've been involved in aircraft safety for a while simply because of lasers.
Sure.
Right? So there was a spate of time when people were pointing laser pointers at commercial aircraft as they were trying to land, and it was blinding the pilots. Right? So you then take the possibility of drones flying around, and you've got this other thing that can interfere with airspace as well. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, these technologies are so easily available, right, that people can literally go and fly these things illegally in places where they shouldn't be flying them. And it's very difficult to stop that.
Absolutely. Okay, 902-405-6000. Bobby, hello.
Good day, gentlemen.
Hey.
My question is, if we go to a general thermonuclear war, it said that it would, with all the dust in the air, it would take 10 days to cover the globe, and then it will last for 10 years. Well, would we be able to grow anything under that dust, like vegetables or anything like that?
Yeah. So the nuclear winter scenario is a huge problem. Yep. And look, I'm just going to come flat out and say it. Nuclear war just destroys everything, right? It's the end of society as we know it. It's the end of humanity as we know it. And any hope of that being survivable, in my opinion, is just ridiculous, right? These things are so incredibly destructive. You throw up so much dust that you have the nuclear winter scenario, and you're literally going to be at maybe 1 or 2% crop yields for at least 10 or 15 years after that. There will be a few places where you can still grow them, but they're probably going to be around the equator. Like certainly the north, you're not going to be growing anything up here.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Right. So it's like people are talking about nuclear war more and more recently, and I'm like, no, this is just the end. If this happened, it's the end.
Okay, Bob, thanks for the call.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for the Science Files. Stephen, hello.
Oh, hello. Sorry about that. I was just typing in an IM to somebody. So I won't drone on.
Oh, there you go. Well done.
I like it.
I will.
And I'll move on to a different question. And unfortunately, my Facebook feed is full of food items from Alton Brown and Bill Nye the Science Guy. And one of the things that came past was that Jupiter does and does not actually orbit our sun at the sun's center. And because it's so massive that the sun actually orbits Jupiter and Jupiter orbits the sun.
Okay.
But I guess it's something called a barycenter.
Yeah. Okay, this is legit.
How do other planets?
This is totally legit.
Jupiter orbit.
Yeah. So, but what you need to know is this is all completely correct, but the difference between the mass ratios of the two things that are orbiting determines how how big let's call it a perturbation, how big a change that orbiting around the barycenter versus just orbiting around the big object is. And so if you're something like the Earth, right, then we have a fairly tiny impact, right? And we make the sun move around that barycenter at a very, very low speed. It's literally it's less than a meter a second. But, and here's the key thing, if you have a big planet like Jupiter that's fairly close in, that's actually going to make the sun move around the common center of mass, that's what the barycenter is, fairly quickly, like literally at sort of like running pace. And you can measure that, right? And that's how we've been able to infer the positions of planets around certain stars, right? We call it the stellar wobble, but it's really absolutely correct physics that both the planets both the sun and Jupiter orbit around their common, what's called barycenter, their common center of mass.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So now, does Jupiter exert force on the planets behind it? Like Saturn out?
Yep.
Oh, it does.
Yep.
And does that affect their orbit around the sun?
It does. And so here's the really sort of cool story that if you know very precisely what the orbit of a planet is, you can then calculate how well it fits an ellipse. And if it just so happens it doesn't fit that ellipse very well, then you can go and look for something that might be what we call, again, perturbing the orbit of that planet. And so I think it was Neptune, or could be Uranus as well, that was found this way.
Oh, that is so cool. Thank God you're an astrophysicist. I'm just an IT guy that drones on.
Yeah, no, this was something that people who were calculating orbits were really sort of like trying to predict. And so I'm pretty sure it's the discovery of Neptune, right? Because it perturbs the orbit of Uranus. And that was the key thing that got people thinking, oh, there has to be something else out there.
Something else has to be out there that's affecting that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. I appreciate it. And back to your regularly scheduled program with Todd.
All right, there you go. Steven sounds like he wants to be a comedian too, doesn't he?
Well, there we go.
Just goes to show when you tell a dad joke and you get one laugh, don't go for it the second time. It's not going to work.
Oh, I mean, I'm a Brit, so I just love puns anyway. So, it's
Vanessa, am I right? If you get the obligatory chuckle on the first one, don't expect it on the second one, right? There you go. How's that sound, Rob?
The second one is never as good as the first one.
All right. The second half hour of the Science Files will be just as good as the first one. The Science Files continues when we come back. All right, it's the Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker, astrophysicist, St. Mary's University. We got some room for you. Give us a call. Open lines for you, 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with Rob, if you've got a question. Science-related, of course, 902-405-6000. Rob, I wanted to ask you this question. I know I didn't send you the story, but I thought I'd throw it at you because I'm convinced that you're going to be able to pivot and have some more validity to this one than the drone story. Okay, I'll read a bit of it. It's off the CTV website.
In my defense, with the drone story, I said I don't think there's anything in it, and I did the research, and there wasn't anything in it. So I had a good nose on that one.
All right. Lunar halo graces weekend full cold moon over the Maritimes. Have you heard of a lunar halo?
So I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be referencing, but I mean, certainly atmospheric effects. You can have ice in the atmosphere, so you will actually get a ring around the moon.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is not uncommon. That happens, well, I wouldn't say that often, but I've certainly seen a few of them. I've seen them pretty much everywhere I've been as well. So I've seen them in the UK, I've seen them in Canada too. Yeah.
Okay, I just sent you the link, but anyway, nonetheless, it is pretty cool to look at a lunar halo. But it's amazing what Mother Nature can serve up for our vision, right?
For the atmospheric effects, I mean, so the key thing that happens with atmospheric effects is you've got something in the atmosphere that's changing the path of the light in one way or another. And so the classic example we do is a rainbow, right? Literally, you've got light that's bouncing around inside the raindrops and coming out, giving you 1, 2, sometimes 3 or more rainbows. And so it's the same thing with this, except instead of like it being rain, you've got ice crystals. Right. And so the very specific sort of like hexagonal shape of ice crystals is going to give you a very specific angle associated with the ring.
Yeah, Northern Lights, another spectacle that
So Northern Lights, I think I'd kind of classify that as a slightly different phenomenon because that is about very high in the atmosphere, and it's also created by things interacting with one another that are coming from the sun, right? So that's a little bit, I feel it's a little bit, well, I don't know. At the end of the day, with Northern Lights, you've got something that's really quite energetic and moving, whereas with something like a halo, you've just got a bunch of things that are all sort of like fairly still in the atmosphere, and then the sun is just going through those particular ice crystals and getting refracted.
Right. Okay, 902-405-6000. Alexander's giving us a call. Hello, Alexander.
Hi, Todd. Hi, Dr. Thacker.
Hi.
2 quick questions for you. One, you mentioned on your show a couple of weeks ago about Betelgeuse, and the light from Betelgeuse takes, I think you said it was 400 or 500 years to reach Earth.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there a maximum distance that the human eye can see starlight from? Like, what's the farthest star that we can see with just your eye?
Oh, so the answer to that is no. The key thing then is going to be how bright is the source. That's the main thing, because roughly speaking, the brightness goes down as 1 over the distance squared. There are actually what we call relativistic corrections to that, but that's good enough. And so to see something very, 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 very far away, you need something that's stupidly bright. So you can see like probably the Andromeda Galaxy might be the most distant thing that you can see with the naked eye. And that's about, what is it? That's going to be 700,000 kiloparsecs. So that's going to be over 1 million light years away.
Okay. And my second question, as a star ages, does the light change? And would you be able to see that with the human eye also?
Here's the thing. So the amount of output from a star is going to change over time, but the time scales are really a lot longer than the human lifetime, with one exception, and that is stars that are variable. So variable stars, we can see the amount of light going up and down. There are some very, very good naked eye astronomers who can actually do good estimations of what's happening to them. David Turner, who was in our department for many years, was very, very good at that. And so with variable stars, yes, you can see that and you can make measurements of those, right? But in terms of more, I don't know, what we call main sequence stars, more regular stars like the sun, then they're not making as big a change as a variable star would.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for the Science Files with Rob Thacker. Again, 902-405-6000. All right, Ryan's giving us a call. Hello, Ryan.
Me? Wow, that was fast. I literally just called. How you guys doing today?
We're doing well. That's what happens.
Don't give out the trade secret.
The trade. No, Ryan. Ryan. Actually, I've got 12 people on hold, but I saw your name and I wanted to put you priority first. No, just kidding. You just happened to be the call, and your timing was perfect.
All right.
Apparently. Wow. How you guys doing today?
We're well.
Thanks. Laughing at ourselves.
Yeah, I'm laughing along with you. So is everyone else, I think.
Thanks.
So I was I'm curious about not specifically past potential life on Mars, but the question is, because the thought is that there was liquid water on Mars at one point, and that was 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, as I understand.
Something like that, yeah.
So what I'm curious about is our sun's life cycle and what the light's what stage of its life would have been in at that point, and how is that different from today, and how does that affect the potential for life, if that all makes sense?
Sure. So the sun was actually colder in the past than it is now, right? And so it's actually warming up a little bit as it goes along what we call its main sequence evolution. So it's not hugely colder. It's like a few, sort of like 10% or something like that, if I remember correctly. Some of my friends in stellar astronomy will probably correct me on that. But so it was actually colder in the past, which makes it surprising for me that Mars did actually have this surface ocean for a time. And the only way I think that could have happened is if it had a bigger atmosphere at the time, right? And that would have been one of the ways that it kept warm to keep it liquid. And so, but over a period of time, because Mars is so small, right, then it can't hold on to its atmosphere. And that's really the challenge for Mars as a planet that's good for supporting life.
Okay, so our sun wasn't in a well, like you said, it was colder, but it wasn't a significantly different period of life that would have made it easier for Mars to have life. Because as you said, colder, Mars being farther away, that should mean harder for life to exist.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what I was trying to hint at, so the only way, because Mars has a primarily carbon dioxide atmosphere now, but it's not very dense at all, right? It's really quite thin. It's good enough for you to be able to see sort of like little whirlwinds and so on, but that's about it. So in the past, though, it was presumably much thicker, and if it was much thicker in the past, then it would have been able to create a warming blanket around it. That's the main thing.
Is the loss of the atmosphere primarily due to its mass, lack of mass?
Yeah. Well, it's a combination of that and the fact that the sun's basically cosmic rays from the sun, solar wind, and so on are constantly bombarding the Mars atmosphere as well and just blowing the atmosphere away. And over a period of billions of years, that has a really big impact. In fact, NASA had this idea of looking at how we could put a shield in space to kind of protect Mars's atmosphere from the solar wind. But it's a crackpot idea, if you ask me. Right. Yeah,
that'd be something along the lines of terraforming. So this is okay. So no magnetosphere is what's the problem is basically.
That's a big part of it. Yep. Not enough mass.
Okay,
no magnetic field. Yep.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Ron, hello.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. Dr. Thacker, I just recently finished a book by Stephen Webb when he postulated about 75 different solutions to the Fermi paradox.
Okay.
A little bit depressing at the end, but I was wondering whether or not you have a preferred solution to the Fermi paradox, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So I can only guess the depressing one is that most alien life forms are really vicious and take other alien life forms out, which is kind of like the three-body problem hypothesis, that any set of life forms that starts broadcasting the fact that it's there then gets wiped out. I actually do agree that that's a particularly depressing viewpoint on life in the universe, and I would hope that that's not the truth. I really do hope that. My preferred explanation is that the reality is there aren't very many, if any other at all, intelligent civilizations in the galaxy. I think that we may well be the product of a unique number of circumstances to create really advanced intelligent life forms on the planet, create technologies and so on. And a lot of that, in my opinion, is probably down to stability. There's evidence, and in fact, one of the stories I sent Todd that was quite interesting, that our sun is really quite quiet and very placid and not very active, and that other stars might be more active, and that could be a problem for life in general. So I have come to the conclusion, and it could be a wrong one, admittedly, I'll be a scientist and put my hat on that, and that is that the galaxy is very big. There aren't very many other civilizations, and it takes a long time to explore space. Right, that for me is the key thing. There have been simulations that have looked at this, legitimate papers written about this, and it's actually very, very slow to get across space in general without running the risks of basically running into something and destroying yourself. Because if you go very, very fast and you hit anything, you get wiped out, right? And so the argument is it just takes a long time.
How do you define intelligence?
Oh, it's a really difficult question, but in the context of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, it's really simple. Mm-hmm. And that's whether the society creates a signal that you can use to detect it, right? And that's the key thing. So if we go back 200 years, people, crazy as it may sound, people talked about sending messages to Mars by creating giant fires on the Earth, right? Of course, we would never want to do that, right? But those kind of things, I don't think that's really a good example, but certainly for SETI, people were interested in literally civilizations that developed technology and could send huge radio blasts out there that we could detect. And that was the definition, essentially, of intelligence.
Okay, 902-405-6000. John, hello. Hey, John.
Oh, hello, Dr. Rob.
Hey.
Here, I got a question that's going to really stump you. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we get you.
No problem.
Okay. So, Dr. Rob, the Earth, the Moon, all the planets are out in the vacuum of space, right? In the darkness of space.
Okay.
Why is it that we can see the Moon in back of our blue sky? Why can we? How are we able to see the Moon with our blue sky in the back? I'll hang up. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay.
This is a great question because quite often people say, "Oh, I didn't realize I could see the moon during the day," right? And the answer is what you're seeing in the blue sky is literally light being scattered off atoms in the atmosphere. This is something called Rayleigh scattering, primarily off nitrogen because that's the most common molecule in the atmosphere. And so there is this sort of like background of blue, but it's not strong enough that it's going to stop something that's very, very bright, right? And so, for example, it's not strong enough to stop us seeing the sun because the sun's out there in space as well, right? And so we can see the moon during the day because all that matters is the moon is lit up by the sun and in a position in the sky where we can see it, right? And if you can see it, right, then you're going to be able to see the moon because it's so freaking bright. I mean, it really is very bright, right, that we can see it during the daytime as well. So you go out there, it's often visible during the daytime. It's visible at the daytime almost as much as it's visible at night. Right.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. The Science Files with Rob Thacker. 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, it's the Science Files with Rob Thacker. We got some time for you to the top of the hour. If you'd like to get a question in, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Leonard's giving us a call. Hello, Leonard.
Hello, how are you doing?
We're well.
Good.
Okay, it's kind of a Christmas theme question I have. It's recorded that the three wise men came from the east. I was wondering if there's any astronomical way that this could either be disproved or verified.
So there's been a lot of, the direction that they came from, I can't answer, but I can answer sort of the hypotheses around the Christmas star, if that's close.
Right.
And so most people think that the argument there was some kind of nova, which is a white dwarf related event, or a supernova explosion, which is a really, really big star going up. And so that's kind of been the thing that people have tended to fall back on as a possible explanation, right? But it's not an easy thing to, because you've got to make sure that you can go and find something. Like if it was a supernova explosion, you'd expect some kind of relic in the right place or something like that. So it's a little bit of a challenging thing to come up with. The second thing that people often bring up is the possibility of a comet. Right, but we would kind of probably expect there to be documents of the comet in like places like Chinese history and things like that. And I don't think there is anything close on that.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Okay. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. And thinking of the Bible, and I think it's Ezekiel has been referred to as possibly people witnessing aliens. Have you heard of that before, Rob?
I haven't. I mean, it's always a challenge, right? Because in modern discussions of things like that, people will bring in sort of like angels as aliens and things like that. So I'm going to be very, very careful about that.
Well, I guess it's interesting though when they describe what they're witnessing, and if you read, I don't have the verses in front of me, but I have read it, and it does. I could see how somebody might interpret if they were witnessing an alien spacecraft as that.
Okay, so I'm going to get all scientific on you right now.
Okay, sure.
So the challenge that I have with that is, like, we all know that the Bible, as it is, has a very long history.
Yeah.
And you're going a very long way through a lot of different rewrites of an eyewitness viewpoint on something to the thing that gets written down.
Sure.
Right. And as a scientist, it would be very difficult to take that as a sort of like strong piece of evidence. In fact, we just spoke about the Christmas star.
That's
we're
why I brought it up.
trying to correlate against other pieces of historical information.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So for that reason, you're less than convinced.
Well, I can't. It's just gone through so many evolutions. There's like a different person writing that story down at the time. And so I just can't take it that seriously.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And I mean, this is true even of eyewitness reports nowadays, right?
Yeah,
because
sure.
eyewitness testimony in general is really not considered strong enough evidence.
Like drones in New Jersey. Right?
But this is a reality, and it's one of the things that people who believe they've seen something get very upset about. Right?
Yeah.
But it's just the standard of evidence that's needed is so high for something that's so incredible that you are in a position where you literally say, as much as I truly believe that you may believe in what you've seen, I'm sorry, but I can't accept that as a high enough level of evidence.
Okay, fair enough. Sam, hello.
Hi, how's it going, guys?
Going well.
Good. I am wondering, why don't we go back to the moon more often? Just seeing how we went so much during the 60s through the 80s. Why don't we go back in the modern day?
So there were plans to build a lunar base in the late 60s, but that never happened essentially because it costs money, right? And so what happened with particularly, I think the US is the best sort of spacefaring nation to pick on in this particular case, talk about. And so they ended up deciding that they were going to invest in renewable vehicles, which was, as we all know, the space shuttle. And that in the end turned out to be a pretty reliable launch vehicle, but a pretty expensive vehicle at the end of the day. And so that meant that a lot of their funds went into something that really didn't move space as we knew it at the end of the 60s forward in any really significant way. I'm going to be honest with that. And so nowadays what we're seeing is probably the biggest, particularly with reusable boosters, landings. The Super Heavy booster is an amazing engineering achievement. And nowadays we are seeing a level of technology sophistication that we haven't seen for 50 years, right? And that's really the main reason that we just ended up having different priorities, and that's okay. That's fine.
Okay, Sam, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Thank you very much, guys.
Okay. Thanks for the call. Barry, hello.
Hi, good afternoon, gentlemen. And Todd, welcome back. Hope
Thank you.
Doing well.
Yeah.
And just two things. One, the fella was asking about the moon reflectiveness, but is there something about the substance on the moon that makes it so reflective? And I just have one other thing. I found a book by Sarah Seeger. She's an astro.
Yep, she's great. Yep.
She grew up in Toronto. So it reminds me of the little girl that phoned your show quite a few months ago. So I thanks for your input.
Sure. Okay. Sure. So I'll just talk about Sarah Seeger. So Sarah is a Canadian astrophysicist. She's now working down in the States, but she's also Order of Canada as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she's done a lot of work on both stars and extrasolar planets as well. So she's really brilliant, and we were delighted to have her actually come and give our McLennan lecture a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the moon's surface, so as far as I know, there's nothing really specific about the moon's surface that's ultra reflective, but it's primarily a little bit more reflective than certain parts of the Earth in terms of its bare rock, because there's a lot of rock there. But it's not as reflective as, say, something like ice. Ice would be considered more reflective than the moon's albedo, as it's called. Right. So there are, on the other hand, very dark patches on the moon. I think that's something that we tend to forget, that are actually lower than the Earth's average reflectivity. And so you look at the mares, the so-called Cs, those are actually not very reflective at all. And so when you look at the overall amount of light that's reflected, you actually find that because of all of this snow and so on the Earth, so the moon actually has a lower albedo than the Earth does.
Okay. Rob, we have to wrap it up there. Listen, thanks so much. The Science Files is the last edition for this year. You'll be back in the new year. I think you said January 7th, correct?
I guess that's going to be the date, yeah. So happy holidays, everyone. Take care.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Rob. Always appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. And I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow, 10 o'clock. See you then.